Today we are going to be making some brookies and key lime pie for my daughter's birthday because those are her two favorite things and she doesn't like cake. And then I'm going to do a little bit of meal prep since I'm going to be out of town this weekend. I'm going to make some kind of chicken taquitos and some more chicken tenders for everyone to have during the weekend. So let's get our chicken kind of seasoned up and ready to go into the oven. This is going to be for our little taquitos, and we'll shred it up and then we'll put them in our tortillas with some Monterey Jack cheese and fry them up. And so I'm giving them some little snips. That way they'll kind of shred up nicely when we cook them, and then the seasonings can really work their way into it. I'm going to drizzle them with a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, which is going to allow those flavorings and keep it nice and tender and lots of flavor in there. We're going to do a little bit of liquid smoke to give it a nice smoky flavor, which I think will play well with our seasonings. Just a I'm actually doing it in my cap because a little goes a long way, just like a couple little drops. And then our spices that we're going to use a Mexican Fiesta seasoning, which is kind of just like a Mexican seasoning. I got it from Whole Foods, but it's one of my favorite because it's just a nice little mild blend, not too spicy, which is the way I like it. We're going to kind of coat it up nicely, and it's a salt-free one. I'm going to give it a good amount because we want it to really flavor everything, including the cheese. So a nice coating over the whole bit of it. Then I'm going to use up the last of my oregano here, about a half a teaspoon or so. I guess I don't need the rest of it, just a little bit. A little onion powder, a little shake, and a little garlic salt. And then I'm going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top of this. And then we're going to put it in the oven to bake. And then when it's done cooking, when it's cooked all the way through, we'll shred it up. And this will go inside our little taquitos. So just a nice little drizzle over the top of each one. And that will also give a little bit of fat and flavor to it because chicken breast is a pretty lean meat. And so this will allow those spices to adhere up fairly well. So since I'm going to be cooking my brookies at 350, we're just going to pop these in, and I'm just going to put them at the bottom. This is going to take about 20 to 30 minutes to bake up. So while we're doing everything like that, we'll put it in there, and then I'll grab it towards the end to shred it all the way up. Let's work on our brookies because those are going to be what take the longest to bake because they're like a brownie base for it. So they always take forever. I'm going to start with we'll start with our cookie and our brownie bases. We'll kind of make them both at the same time. I'm going to use 3/4 of a cup of butter for each one. So I'm going to start with essentially, I'm going to put a stick in each one. So each stick is a half a cup of butter. I'm going to put half a cup of butter in here. And then for the brookie part, for the brownie part of the brookie, brookie is a mixture of a brownie and a cookie, I'm going to put my butter in my saucepan because we're going to be melting it with our chocolate chips to make a kind of a chocolatey mixture to it. And then I'm going to cut my other stick in half, and then that is going to give us our 3/4 of a cup. So it's kind of nice because it's a nice even 3 sticks for this. But these are my daughter's favorite. She's always like, can you make a brookie? Can you make us brookies? And I'm like, brookies are like making 2 desserts in one because you have to make brownies and you have to make cookies. So it's not like, yes, you're getting 1 dessert, but you're doing the work for 2 desserts. And then I'm going to make her key lime pie because she also loves that. And she's a pretty good kid when she wants to be. I'm going to have my butter start melting over there on I'm going to do it on a kind of a fairly low heat. And once we've got a base of it melted, I'm going to add in 1.5 chocolate chips for that. But while we're waiting for that to melt, let's get our sugars creamed into our base here. We're going to add in 3/4 cup of brown sugar. So the brookie or the cookie base of the brookie is pretty heavy on the brown sugar, but not so much on the granulated sugar, but that gives it its just really wonderful flavor. So we're going to use 3/4 cup of brown sugar. We're going to firmly pack it down. So that's a 1/2 cup, and then I'll get 1/4 cup more. And then we're going to use just 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, but for the brownie portion, we'll use a bit more. Okay, so just 1/3 cup of sugar. And then think of it, you're making cookies.
Light brown sugar or dark?
Light brown sugar, because you don't want as much of that molasses flavor to it for it. But if you love it, you can definitely go more with it. It doesn't really matter for it, especially in regards to the dark brown molasses reacting with the baking powder. We're using baking soda, so you're going to get the fine pop up regardless. I got this one in here. Put this in there. Okay, let's get these creamed together. We're going to mix this well, and then once we're going to do that, we're going to add in 1 egg and then 1 yolk. So this is going to be kind of an egg-heavy, yolk-heavy recipe, but that's because cookies and brownies both use a lot of eggs for it. Now you're going to want to use room temperature butter for this because you want it to cream together nicely. You can also use a stand mixer too. Both work well. Right. Once I've got that base there, I'm going to mix it around. Let's give it a little bit higher mix to kind of get that going here. Okay. And then I'm going to start putting in my chocolate chips over here. So the nice thing about this recipe is you just need 1 bag for the whole thing. You're going to use 1.5 cups into the brownie part, and you're going to use just 1/2 cup into the brookie part. But there's about 2 cups in the entire bag of chocolate chips here. And I just eyeball it. I'm not going to get out and measure it. I'm just going to know that I need to reserve about 1/4 of this bag for our brookie part. So we're going to add this into the butter mixture. Keep your heat down low because even though we have a good amount of fat in there to protect the chocolate from scalding, it can still burn. So keep that heat down lower, and then we'll just mix it until those chocolate chips are melted. But you don't need to get out a double boiler for this because we do have that butter. Just have to be more careful with it. So I'll mix that in there. I'm going to turn it down even lower to about a 2. And it will melt up pretty fast. But it's going to give it such a great flavor. We will also be using cocoa powder. So it's that you get that nice flavor from both the cocoa powder and the chocolate chips. So for our eggs in here, let's get a little bit of this off first. We're going to use 1 egg and 1 yolk. There we go. So I'll do my whole egg first. And then I grab a small little bowl to put my egg whites in. Caught it. There's that yolk. Almost dropped the whole thing in there. And then we're going to mix the egg in and cream it in. And then not only is this recipe have a lot of eggs in it, it's got a lot of vanilla in it, but that vanilla really makes it pop. So we'll mix in our egg. There we go. I'm going to give our chocolate a nice little swirl here. Again, keep your temperature nice and low and stir frequently because we don't want that chocolate to burn. And once you've got, I would say about 70–80% of that those chocolate chips melted, you can just completely remove it and the residual heat will continue to melt them. I think we're pretty good. So I'm just going to turn off and then slide it over because that burner still stays hot and can scald your chocolate. And we don't want that. Okay, let's get our vanilla in here. I need a whole tablespoon of vanilla, which is going to use up the rest of this plus some more of our new one. So I'll get that ready. One whole tablespoon of vanilla extract. Oh, that's like a perfect tablespoon. I was like, it's definitely not going to be enough in there. And then we're going to do a ½ teaspoon of salt. And then we'll mix those in. Until that vanilla is nice and creamed in there. And it's going to help make it nice and looser for it. And a nice smoother batter base here. There we go. Lovely. Okay, let's add in our baking soda. Where did I put it here? So for our baking soda, we're going to add in a ½ teaspoon. And again, baking soda for both of these. That brown sugar is going to really give it its kind of reacting agent. And then we'll add in 2 cups of flour. But I want to make sure the baking soda gets completely mixed in. There we go. So once we add this in, we'll add in our 2 cups of flour, and then we can mix in our chocolate chips, and we'll have our cookie part done. And then we'll finish up our batter, our brownie batter part. So 2 cups of flour, and you're going to want to use an all-purpose flour for this. So 1 and 2. And we're going to mix that until it's completely creamed together nicely, and then we'll stir in those. Should I line these up? There we go. Like a puzzle piece. There. And then we'll add in our chocolate chips, and then we'll make our brownie batter part for it.
Do you always use unbleached flour?
Yes, I always use unbleached flour because I'm always making sourdough, and sourdough bread really needs unbleached flour because the bleaching process kills the natural yeast in the thing, and it kind of inhibits your rise on it. And so I don't want to have to keep multiple tubs of different types of flours. I always just make sure that I buy unbleached flour. Okay. We've got our base here. I'm gonna knock those out here, and then we'll just mix in with our spoon the chocolate chips. So here's that remaining ½ cup of chocolate chips. And we'll mix those in. And now the cookie for the Brookie base, we actually are going to crumble over the top onto the brownie batter. So the brownie goes in first. And that's just because the brownie batter is a little bit more liquid. And if you put the cookie batter in, you'll never see them. They'll be flooded with the brownie batter. Now this recipe is different from my chocolate chip cookie dough recipe, and it needs to be because it has to cook up a little bit different. This is more, and it's a little bit different from a blondie recipe as well. You just have to do a slightly different variation because you're cooking it with the brownie batter, which is a different consistency as well. But we've got that base ready, and we've got our chocolate chips here melted. So let me grab a bowl, and we can get working on our next base for it here. Okay, for this, we need to get our sugar ready. We need 1 1/3 cup of sugar, or not a third, 1 1/2 cups of sugar. So this one has a good amount of sugar in it for it. Yeah, I need to get a little spoon here. It's just refilled it, and so it's kind of hard to scoop it up to the top. There we go. So 1 1/2 cups of sugar. And then we're going to add in 3 eggs plus 1 yolk. And that yolk gives a little bit of extra richness to this without giving too much liquidity, I guess. And pop those. And let's get our last one in here. Again, just the yolk. There. And then we're going to mix those in, and then we're going to add our chocolate mixture. I just like to make sure that my egg gets creamed into my sugar first so that it's a little bit safer, from the heat on there. Since we're going to use all this together, I'm just going to use the same spoon from our thing because they're all going into the same pan. Let's cream our eggs into our sugar here. And then we'll add in a tablespoon of vanilla and our baking soda and our salt, and then our chocolate mixture. So let's get this whipped together nicely. Here we go. So we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Let's grab this right here. And I said, this is a vanilla heavy recipe, but it is worth it because that vanilla, it really enhances the chocolate flavor in the brownie as well as the brown sugar flavor in the blondie part. So 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And then a teaspoon of salt. And then 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. I always have a lot of weird measuring things, but one thing I do not have is 3/4 of a teaspoon measuring. It's always a guesstimate. Let's mix these together. And then we will add in our flour and our cocoa powder, and then last you'll put in your chocolate and your butter mixture. This is, you're going to use 3/4 cups of flour with 3/4 cup of cocoa powder, and then that chocolate mixture will come in. So the cocoa powder actually takes place in part of the flour in this, which gives your brownie a nice kind of fudgy deliciousness to it. So 3/4 of a cup. So that's 3/4. And then let me grab another measuring spoon for my cocoa powder. Now, this is important when you're making these. Do not go out and get like a raw cacao powder or a super dark cocoa powder, or your brownies will taste really bitter. Made that mistake before thinking like, oh, I love dark chocolate, I'll try it. They were very bitter. You're going to just want to use like a good old Hershey's. I think this is the Nestle Toll House. Just a regular cocoa powder for that basic one. If you do the raw one, it's going to be a very bitter brownie. Let's get this. So 3/4 of a cup. Now, I will tell you that cocoa powder is kind of like cinnamon in the sense that it doesn't like to mix in right away. So it always takes a little moment to get it in there. But once we have it mixed in, it'll be delicious. And then we can get these in the oven baking because, of course, they take the longest. But it likes to sit on top of the surface. So Just keep mixing. There. And then we'll pour in our melted chocolate and our butter in just a second. I always just like to get this a good start in it. It takes a good minute to get it. There we go. And now that we've got this pretty much mixed, let's add in our 1.5 cups of melted chocolate with 3/4 cup of melted butter. And then we'll mix that into our brownie batter for our brookies. And then we'll put them in our baking pan with our blondie base and bake them up. Okay, get all of this good chocolatey goodness in here. Don't want any of it to go to waste. And then mix this in nicely. This mixture of the cocoa powder and the chocolate chips really give you just a really decadent brownie part. They're just so good. And I'm using both the kind of the Toll House, Nestle chocolate chips and the Toll House one because they complement each other. But you can really use whatever chocolate chips and cocoa powder you want. Just make sure you like them. There's our good, delicious base. Once it's mixed up, I'm just make sure I have no dry pockets. Perfect. Lovely. Okay, I'm going to grab out a baking sheet here. I need a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. I recommend using metal because like cooking brownies in like a ceramic or a glass takes a lot longer and they don't set as well. So metal works the best.
You have a question. Are you making one dessert for lunch and one for dinner?
I am making my daughter's 2 favorite desserts for her birthday. She does not like cake, and so I'm making a brookie and a key lime pie for it. It's to have her heart's content so she can decide what she likes because we're a big family and desserts don't last long either. And then tonight we're going out to eat tonight, so we won't be here. For dinner will be our little treat afterwards. So I've got it oiled out. Now with this, you're going to start and you're going to put your brownie batter first. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of crumble our cookie batter over the top. So always start with your brownie. Otherwise, if you put your cookie down there, the brownie kind of floods over it and then it does kind of just bakes over the top of it. And I think the best part is this is all butter batter, so it's so delicious. Don't want to waste any. And my daughter's going to be very, very happy. She asks for these all the time. But again, I always say, I'm like, it's really making 2 desserts in one because you got to make cookies and you got to make brownies. So we're going to slide this over, spread it all the way on there. And again, you want to put it in a pan, a 9 by 13, so it has a chance to spread out. You don't want it too thick because we are going to be adding that cookie layer to it. And these do take a good hot minute to bake. Here we go. So I've got that. And now we're going in with the cookies. So you're going to just take this and we're going to just kind of start by placing good sized chunks everywhere. And then I kind of go back over and put, and what kind of happens is the brownies bake, they sink down in there because as the butter heats up in the brownie mixture, these go in and it just is so, so good. And I will say the brownies tolerate the bottom of the pan heat better and they're just so good. Just give them a little tap into there. And it's a good amount. I said this makes a good sized dessert. So even though it felt like, oh, those are, just a shallow bit of brownies, you've got the whole base layer of cookie dough coming here. But don't just like roll it out and put it on a sheet on top. I like to crumble it around. You're going to end up kind of, for the most part, covering it up, but you need to do it in pieces because you want it to bake as naturally as possible. Now we're getting down to the base part here. Here. Because I like to have little kind of like, almost like a desert, little cracks through it. Perfect.
I think it's pronounced dessert.
Yes, a dessert desert. Okay. Let's get this in the oven. This is going to bake at 350 for about 40 to 50 minutes, depending on it. So it really, you have to just kind of look at it, make sure it sits for it. Depends how many times you open it, check on it for it.
And do you have the recipe for this posted anywhere?
So I do have this recipe card for my members, but we will post our live so you can always rewatch and then cook along with me again. And this will definitely be in our cookbook. So I'm going to set my timer for 40 minutes. Now, just like with a brownie and the brookies, since they're thin, you have to let them cool for a while before you cut into them because they're going to be jiggly and you need to let them set before you can kind of get them like cut into them. Otherwise, they'll like ooze everywhere. Let me get butter melting here for our, let me grab some butter out because I guess I forgot to, for our key lime pie. And then we will get our chicken going and then our taquitos going because those are, I can smell the chicken. It smells wonderful. For our key lime pie, we need to use a half a cup of butter, which is equal to 1 stick. So I'm going to melt it. There we go. Once it's melted, we'll mix it with 2 cups of graham crackers and about 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm just going to wipe this area just a smidge cleaner over here so that when we're working on that, it won't be so messy. And then we're going to we'll start working on our chicken. There we go. Okay. Let's get our dredge going and we'll make it up and then we can get our chicken breaded and started frying off because chicken's a pretty easy thing. So for our dredge, I need my flour. And we're just going to do a simple one. These are just going to be chicken nuggets for the kiddos to have over the weekend. While I'm gone, because that's one of my, I will say that is the boys' favorite, all boys. Cameraman, Torin, all of them. That's their favorite food. So we'll have that for them to kind of eat. And then I'm making chicken taquitos, which they also love. Maybe Evie will whip up some avocado smash for them to dip them in. So we're going to start with about 1.5 cups of flour because I only have a little bit of chicken here. We're going to add in some onion powder, about a tablespoon. So a couple good shakes. I know, I have to bend the thing. Do not confuse the onion powder with the garlic salt. They're same brand, and it has gotten me a couple times already. Around about a tablespoon or so of garlic salt. So a couple good shakes. And then I want about a tablespoon of Mrs. Dash's table blend. Season it well because you want those flavors there. We're going to do about a teaspoon of black pepper. We can use the rest of our oregano on this. It's very little. And then I'm going to add just about a teaspoon or so of Lowry's seasoned salt. And then I'm going to get a fork and we'll mix that up. And that will be the base range for our chicken tenders. And then we will whip up our egg wash, and then we'll get those going. I'm going to turn off the heat, and then we'll just let the residual part melt the rest of my butter because I don't want it to be a brown butter. Here we go. And then just mix it around for this. Now in a bowl, I will say the spices like to hide into those little corners here. So I'll mix it in. There we go. Get those nice and mixed up. And then we'll add some panko breadcrumbs in as well. So let me get that open and ready for when we need that. That will add our second like crunch on it. Assuming we can, there we go, almost on here. And then I'm gonna give a quick little crack here, but on our eggs for it. But we have somebody at our door real quick. So I'm gonna take this while my husband checks out our mystery visitor of the day. You never know when that's gonna happen, but I'm sure he'll be back really quick. But to go over this, we've got our, I'm gonna do a quick little slide down. Our panko, or our breading mix with our flour seasoned mix. Now I'm gonna crack my eggs into our mixture here and kind of get that going. This is going to be our egg base for it that we will do on our kind of after we dredge it, and then we'll kind of go in here. Looks like we're just like a telemarketer or something. He's back. Yay. Okay, let's get our eggs mixed in. What would I do without my cameraman? About my videographer. Give him his bougie name. Okay, we've got our 3 eggs there. So my rule of thumb, I'm just using 2 chicken breasts here, but I always like to use 1 more egg than my chicken breast so that I have enough to get through. It's typically 1 egg per chicken breast, but always use just an extra one so you don't run out. Okay. There we go. We've got that whipped up. Give my hands a quick rinse. And then let me grab my knife so we can fillet up our chicken strips and get them ready to fry up here. So always try to use one hand. Keep it clean when you're cooking so that you can, I can dump my panko breadcrumbs in there and whatnot. So for these, I'm going to do, slightly longer chicken strips this time instead of the chicken nuggets that way. I think they'll get a little bit more meat per each one. I think the bigger boys like them when they're a little bit longer. They're better for dipping. Ample space to dip. Yeah. And we'll go there. Oh, a couple tenders. And get this one. Okay. So we've got our chicken tenders here. We're going to go into our dredge here, and I'm just going to do a couple at a time, and we're going to kind of coat them up with this and the nice seasoned thing, and this is our first coating. And again, this is just a basic, garlic, salt, onion powder, Mrs. Ash's table blend, oregano, Lowry seasoned salt on there, and black pepper. And then we're going to add some panko breadcrumbs. You want to make sure your first round is seasoned up well, because this is what stays on the chicken the whole time. This is what's going to cling and hold the second round on. Here we go. So we've got it. And then we'll get this nice and coated up. And then we're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs, which will give us that extra little crunch at the end for it, which who doesn't love the extra crunchy? and about a cup or so. You can always add more to give you more of a crunch, or you can go just straight up panko, which gives you like the super crunch. But I like the nice mix of the flavored dredge in there with it. Okay. Before I do that, try to get this open with my one clean hand. I'm gonna get my olive oil in here so it can start heating up. That way we can, hopefully it'll be nice and hot and we can get our first round of chicken tenders in here heating up. And then we should be able to make the crust base of our key lime pie and whip up the second part while these are frying on it here. So I'm going to start my oil on high and then we'll turn it down once we actually get them in there. Wrong burner. There we go. So what we're going to do is into our egg mixture and then into this, but I'm going to do it one at a time because I want the breading to stay on nicely. So while you can do the first dredge a little bit, a couple at a time, the second one is a little bit more tedious because you want those coatings to stick. There we go. And coat it up. Make sure you get it all coated because once that egg binds with that first dredging, that flour mixture, it's going to create kind of like an edible glue, which is going to hold this second breading on. And that's key to making sure your breading doesn't fall off during the frying process. And what we'll do is I'm going to freeze these down, and that way my husband can kind of reheat them up over the weekend for the boys. And he just pops them in the oven on like the air fryer setting for about 5 minutes, and then they're crisp up and perfect. There we go. Coat them up. And perfect. And I will say this is much cheaper than buying a bag of chicken nuggets at the store because a bag of chicken nuggets is like super expensive and you don't get very many in there. And my boys eat a lot of chicken nuggets. And I think it tastes better too. And they're more filling. They're real chicken. And coat it up. And I will say the fun thing is you can change up and add different spices to your dredging to change and match your meal. So if I'm going to do like an Italian dish and I want like an Italian fried chicken with it, I add Italian spices to it. If you want a spicier one, add some Cajun spices to it. It's really like you could do anything. I've done like ranch, Parmesan cheese. You can add different, instead of panko, you could add potato chips, crushed pretzels, crushed, corn flakes, so many different things to add the different crunches, but it's the same base. It's that same foundation. And I think that's what you use to build off when you're cooking, is having those foundational skills that allow you to alter a recipe, but it's not like you're relearning a different skill. It's the same skill, just tweaked. There we go. And then when you're breading, I always say, use just one hand because you want to keep one hand clean during this process because you get pretty messy. And being able to keep a hand clean allows you to be able to, stir a pot, or when you go to wash your hands, turn on the sink and get your soap. So train yourself to do it with one. There used to be the method of one hand for the dry, one hand for the wet. I could never keep my hands I would always cross over. And this way you just keep one hand clean, you do it all. One hand's going to get messy, but you keep it to kind of be able to do stuff. Okay, let's get these last two bits here. I think maybe three because I think there's one hiding under there. Coat it up on there. Perfect. And then I'll fill my oil. It's getting nice and hot so that we can get our first round of chicken tenders in there frying. Now, the beauty of chicken tenders is they are going to cook up a lot faster than if you do a bigger filet. Because they're smaller, surface area, the heat gets through faster. But because we already filleted them in half, they're thinner, they're going to cook up faster to begin with. So these are ones that cook up nice and quickly. So that is the nice thing about them too. Now start with your oil, heating it up on high, and then when you drop that chicken in, you're going to turn it down to a medium and cook it over medium heat. You don't want your oil too high, or you're going to cook the outside faster than you cook the inside and most likely burn your breading. And take a little bit of our base, drop it in, and if you get a nice sizzle right away like this, that means you know your oil is nice and hot. So I'm going to drop in some chicken tenders, and then we'll get them frying up. And then once I have them all in there, I'm going to turn my oil down from hot to a medium. But each piece of chicken tender I put in there is bringing that temperature of the oil down. So I like to keep it on that high until I have all of them in there. Don't overcrowd your chicken. Make sure that there's a little bit of a basin, you know, like a little river between each one, so that you get a good crispiness on it and they don't stick together. Get this, and then I'm going to go wash my hands. Okay. Let's get, while those are cooking up, let me grab my little pie dish out of here, and let's get our pie crust for our key lime pie going. And then we can grab our chicken out of the oven to shred up for our taquitos. We need 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs and our butter here. Let me give this a good swirl. So we've got our half a cup of butter, which is 1 stick of butter melted here. Let me measure out. You could always do this in a bowl and then put it in here, but I just mix it in my pie crust pan. That way I don't have to use multiple things. And I need some some granulated sugar. We're going to use about 2 tablespoons. So 2 cups of graham cracker crumbs. You can always crush your own as well. Now, I like a slightly thicker graham cracker crust on my key lime pie because I really love the graham cracker crust. And so does my daughter. So we make it to our almost double the crust size. And then we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of sugar because you want it to be slightly sweetened, which is about 1/8 of a cup. I'm going to get a nice little fork here and give it a quick stir to kind of mix it up. And then we're going to mix our butter here with it. And kind of just coat it up, mix it in here, and then we're going to press it firmly down, and then I'll pop it in my freezer to chill it up, and then we'll whip up our base of it, but we'll grab our chicken out of the oven in just a second. We can take a quick peek at our brownies, our blookies. All right. Here we go. And I'm going to mix this up nicely. And kind of get that butter in there. And this is, key lime pie is, this one's a no-bake key lime pie, so you're going to keep it chilled on there. And once this butter has re-solidified in the fridge, it's going to keep this pie crust firmly together. But mix it around. And then I'm going to kind of push a little bit over the edges right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a piece of parchment paper, and then we will firmly push this down. You want to make sure it's firmly pushed so that that pie crust holds together. You don't want a fluffy base to it because then when you go to cut it, it's not going to hold together well.
How do you keep it from sticking?
It's just naturally, because that butter in there when it's cold, it's just naturally going to come up because it's just butter and graham crackers on it for it. And you're not baking it, it's just chilled. And kind of push that up. I always like to try to make sure I get a little bit of a graham cracker edge on here as best I can. And just make sure you have a good ratio of butter to graham crackers. Don't try to skimp out on the butter because if it's too dry, it will be a very crumbly crust. So if you find that you're working on or you mismeasured, add a little bit more butter on there. So we've got it pretty firmly pressed down here. And then I'm going to put it in our freezer to chill, and that will kind of firm it up nicely. Okay, I'm going to put that on there kind of as a little wrap. And then we can check on our chicken here in just a second. Let me grab our oven mitts, and I'm going to grab our chicken out of the oven for our taquitos. And we can take a quick look at our brookies. I keep wanting to say blondies or brownies, but they're a hybrid. They're about halfway done here, but look how gorgeous. And we're going to give them a flip around. Beautiful. Perfect. And then I'm going to grab our chicken out from underneath since it's nice and ready. They look gorgeous. Now, sometimes when you're cooking a brookie and your oven, depending on how, some ovens cook really high, if you notice that it's getting dark on top, tint it with a little bit of aluminum foil to prevent the top crust from getting too dark. And that way your insides will cook up well without it burning. Here is our chicken that we are going to shred for our taquitos, which we will add some shredded Monterey Jack cheese and put inside our little tortillas and fry up for it. But while we're waiting for that to cool just a little bit, let's whip up the base of our key lime pie. Key lime pie is something that is so simple. At least this recipe it is. I find with anything out there in the world, you can make anything difficult if you want to, but you can also make anything easy. This recipe I make easy. We're going to start by zesting 2 limes, and then we're going to use this fresh lime juice plus a little bit of this key lime juice, and then we're going to use a can of sweetened condensed milk, which I put right around here. If not, I'll grab another one. I swear, it's right over here, guys. I was like, it's hiding from me.
Are you meal prepping today?
I am, yes, making up some meals for this weekend while I'm gone, and then I'm making my daughter's kind of birthday cake sub-in because she doesn't like cake. And then we'll add, our next thing is we're going to add whipped cream into the our base for this, our key lime pie. Let me grab my zester here. We'll flip our chicken in just a second. I'm looking at it, watching the edges going here. But these will be some chicken tenders that my boys will be having up for dinner this weekend. So we want about a tablespoon of lime zest here for our meal, or for our key lime pie, which is, I'm just going to roughly do the zest from both of these limes because I'm going to juice them for our key lime pie. Now, I like to do the mixture of fresh lime juice and key lime juice because you can't beat key lime or fresh lime juice, but it's not as sweet as key lime juice. And key limes, if you've ever seen them, they're really tiny. And if you got to sit there and juice key limes, you're going to be juicing forever, and they're expensive. So this gives you kind of a really good hybrid. But she'll be very, very excited and happy for this on here. But this is just a really simple one that it's not difficult to make. It sits in the fridge and it needs to set, but you essentially are going to whip some cream together, and then the lime juice is going to kind of chemically react with the cream and the sweetened condensed milk to allow it to thicken up. And that's going to make the base of this. And that's what's going to hold it together. The sugar in the sweetened condensed milk is going to give you the sweetness to this dessert, but it's going to be amazing. So there's about our tablespoon of our fresh lime zest. I'm going to flip our chicken tenders over here. So I'm going to grab a spatula and give these a nice flip over. Look at that beautiful golden fry on them. Gorgeous. Perfect. running away from me. And that has that nice kind of amber color to it because that Lowry seasoned salt has a little bit of paprika in it. So just wonderful. There we go. Pop that right here. And again, cooking it on a lower temperature, on a medium, allows it to get that nice golden color to it. And let me get my little juicer here. I found that about 2 limes are going to get me around between a 1/4 and an 1/8 cup of juice here. So.
You have a question? No lives this weekend?
No lives this weekend until Sunday evening. I should be back Sunday evening from our trip. And then I'll have there. But we're going to we have a couple shorts of our family and some things that we've kind of been taking over that we're going to be posting, and some recipe cards and whatnot. So we have a couple things that we haven't released about our family and some things. So there'll be some updates on it. And I'm going to do some updates from our trip, from our daughter and I, as we have fun. And hopefully my husband and the younger crew survives. This is the weekend. This is the fun season where he's home with the younger ones and I'm out frolicking about the country with the olders. It's a nice, relaxing time for me. On there. Okay, let's get our nice and enjoy it. Let's juice up our lime. So not quite. There we go. Half a bit more. So not quite. I always say 2 limes don't get me quite a 1/4 of a cup, and we need a 1/2 a cup. There we go. But I'm going to do it in here, and then I'm going to do the remainder with, I feel like this is the only key lime juice out there, good old Nelly Joe's. We're going to finish up the other up to a 1/2 a cup with Nelly Joe's. I'm going to add it in here. There we go. And then we're going to add in our sweetened condensed milk. And we're going to mix this together. And this is going to start working on, there's like a chemical reaction that happens between the lime juice and the milk. And that will bring those kind of flavors together, thicken it up. And then we're going to whip up a cup of cream to make just a beautiful whipped cream. And then we'll fold the whipped cream or this into the whipped cream. And that will be the base of our key lime pie. And then it just needs to set. But let's mix this together for this. There we go. Perfect. I'm just going to kind of fold it around and mix it. That juice in there. Perfect. And then we'll just mix it until all that juice has kind of mixed into sweetened condensed milk on here. And this is going to be the sweet limey part of our key lime pie. And then we're going to add in, we're going to whip up a cup of cream, and then we'll fold this into the cream, and that will be our base. So let's get that whipped up, and then we'll make up a couple taquitos. We'll get our last things finishing up for this.
What was the total amount of lime and key lime?
So I used the juice from 2 whole limes, which gets me about a 1/4 of a cup, but you need a 1/2 a cup of juice altogether. But 2 limes is what I use because it works about perfectly for this recipe. Okay, we're going to use about a cup. We're going to use a whole cup of cream, and we're going to whip this up into a lovely whipped cream. Now, don't over whip it because you want it to be nice and light and fluffy for it. You don't need to add any sugar or anything in it because the sweetened condensed milk is very, very sweet on its own, and that will add a sweetness to our base here. So I'm going to mix this. I'm going to use my hand mixer. Make sure you use a tall bowl. And while that's mixing, takes a couple minutes for it to whip up. I'm going to take a peek over here. and check out my chicken tenders and see how they're cooking. Perfect. They're just about done. So we'll get them out and we can get our next round in there. There we go. So we'll whip these up until, you have a nice whipped cream. Just make sure you don't have your whipped cream over whipped. You don't want it to turn into butter. And I said it takes around a minute to a minute and a half to 2 minutes to get a good whipped cream. There we go. There we go. We're almost there. Just don't make sure it's not too runny. Perfect. We're almost there. Looking good. Pretty good. Maybe whip it one more second on there, but I want to get my chicken tenders out here. And get these setting, and then we'll whip it for about another 30 seconds. You want it to be able to slightly hold its form, but again, you don't want it to start clotting. Beautiful. I'm going to put our chicken tenders on here. We're going to do them oil side down so that they have plenty of space to soak up and leave them nice and crispy. You can also put them on a cookie cooling rack. There we go. Perfect. I'm going to drop in my last ones here over here and let those start to fry off. Beautiful. And we'll let those start to kind of cook here. Actually, I want to turn this one a little bit because I want it to sit more flat. And then I'm going to just give this a nice little rotation. Make sure it's on my burner perfectly. Beautiful. Okay. Let's whip this guy up real quick. Let me check it. Yeah, a little bit longer. Almost set. There we go. See? Took hardly. You see when you pull it up and it kind of holds its form, that's when you know it's set enough. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold our lime mixture into our base here. But before we do that, let's get a couple of our taquitos frying up here so that they'll be ready in about 2-3 minutes. I'm going to slide this right over here. And then we can get our key lime pie kind of setting on there. Okay. So taquitos are really, really easy to make, and they're a really good thing that preps up well for this. I'm going to just heat up a little bit of olive oil in our pan.
You have a question? Any egg yolks in the pie?
No egg yolk. So this one is a really simple, very light and easy version of a key lime pie. Sweetened condensed milk, fresh lime juice, and cream, and pretty much it.
And can you go over what you coated the chicken with?
So this is just a really simple panko breadcrumb on there. So we made a seasoned dredge using flour, garlic, salt, onion powder, Mrs. Dash's table blend, and black pepper, oregano, and on there. And then panko breadcrumbs here. I'm going to grate up this is our chicken for our taquitos. We season that with Mexican frontier seasoning or fiesta seasoning and onion powder, liquid smoke, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and olive oil. And we're going to shred that up, and we're going to put this inside our little tortillas And we're going to just fry them up and to make these little perfect little Taquitos, which are so they freeze down well, reheat, and are just a perfect little snack to have. I'm using some Monterey Jack cheese, but cheddar, really any cheese that you love works well with this. Now to shred the chicken up that we've been, it's pretty easy. You want to keep it with all of those flavors in there. You're just going to take 2 forks and you're just going to pull apart like this. So you're just going to, shred them this way and we're going to just pull it. And it should come apart nicely. There we go. And then you're going to mix it up in those nice little like bits and sauces in here. So you want to really leave that in that pan because we added a lot of spices and that added a bunch of that flavor in here. Now you can shred your chicken as big or as small as you want it. Think about how you want it in your taquito. Do you want a bigger chunks or if you want to really shred it to finer bits, either one. I'm going to make mine about medium. So you have some good sizes, but some smaller ones along the way. That way it's a little bit easier for my little ones to eat. Here we go. And then I've got my oil heating up. And then I'm just going to go in there and we will kind of mix our cheese and in here. So I'm down in here. This is good. It's nice and cool down enough. Perfect. And then I'm going to mix my cheese in here as well. And then we'll roll them up and then we'll kind of fry them off. When you put them in our pan to fry, make sure you put them with the seam side down so that they don't uncurl. Make sure you mix them up with all of that seasoning in there because that's going to flavor them through. Put our cheese in here. And that's our Monterey Jack here. And then we're going to roll these guys up. Put a little base in here. Like this. And then I'm going to put it down on my pan. And we're going to saute, kind of fry them off until they have a crispy edge. I'm going to put it on my medium now. But you want it to kind of fry up that flour tortilla. I use flour because that's our favorite, to where it's nice and crispy. It will melt the cheese and everything inside. Then we're going to finish off our blanking my mind on it, our key lime pie and let it kind of set in our fridge. And then our blondie or our brookies will beep here in a little bit. Okay, I've got 3 of these. I don't want to crowd my pan. I'm going to turn my heat over nice medium heat for this. Not too high. You want them to kind of cook up and crisp up without burning the tortilla. Okay. We're going to fold our key lime base into our whipped cream. You could fold your whipped cream into it. You can do it either direction. It doesn't matter. You just want to make sure you don't over mix it because you want to keep this base nice and light and fluffy. So folding is scooping up from the bottom and mixing it over versus giving it a stir. And that's just going to gently mix in the base of this. Lovely. And really incorporate that key lime flavor around. I'm going to take a quick break here. Let's flip our flautas or our taquito here. Not yet. I just want to make sure. They can cook up pretty quickly, so I want to make sure I don't overcook them. Here. And again, instead of stirring, lift from the below and mix it in. This way you don't deflate your whipped cream because you want this to be a light, fluffy key lime pie. And once you kind of see that all of it's mixed and is one cohesive mixture, because you don't want 2 separate bases, then we're going to get there. Oh, I must have accidentally nicked this with a little bit. That's okay. I must have nicked my thing with a little bit of a heat there. A little bit. That's fine. Luckily, I got them before they got too dark. Perfect. I must have slid by them, but save them. Whew. Okay. Let's get this flipped up. And there we go. Let's check this guy. Almost. Just about. Okay. Our key lime pie mix is ready, so I'm going to grab out our base. And we're going to put it in here. And we're going to pour all this in here. Spread it around. Look at that. Beautiful. Get it all kind of mixed there. And then we'll zest a little bit more of our lime over the top to give it that pretty look. But before we do that, I want to flip our taquitos. So look how beautiful that is. So let's flip our taquitos here. Perfect. Excellent. And we'll crisp those up. And then I'm going to zest over our key lime pie. This last little bit here, just to give it that little pizzazz that it needs. And then this will just sit in our kind of our pan or in the refrigerator until it's nice and set for it. We're going to go grab our blondie or brookies out of the oven because they are done. And then we are pretty much done here for it. Let's take a nice check on it. Oh, beautiful. Nice kind of golden brown top on here. Look at our gorgeous brookies. We've got our cookie base on top, our brownies cooking through here. Nice golden brown coloring for it. We're going to let it kind of sit and cool. Again, we're not going to cut into it until it is cooled off because it is just like a brownie where you need to let that base under there. You can see the brownie's base is kind of poking up through it, but you've got that beautiful kind of golden brown from the brown sugar base of it and that nice vanilla for it to make that wonderful brookie base. Let's get these guys. We're just about ready on them. Perfect. And then I'm going to see our taquitos here. We're just about ready for our round here. Well, guys, we are almost done with our kind of a meal prep for the weekend. Let me grab a little thing to put that on. My daughter will be very, very, very excited because she just loved it. And these turned out perfect this time. Sometimes I get them where the sides puff up too much, but these are like the most perfect, beautiful golden brown. That means they just baked wonderfully. Okay. Let's check on our taquitos. Those are just about done. Beautiful. Let me grab a little plate for those as well. And
Brenda, thank you again.
well, thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. On here. Okay. I think these are ready to come off. Beautiful. So there are our first round of our taquitos here. Nice and crispy, filled with our shredded chicken. We've got that nice, beautiful kind of our flour base to it. Taking off our second round of our chicken tenders. Beautiful. We'll have these all nice and ready for the weekend on there. Okay, let's do a quick rundown of some of the meals that we prepped for this weekend. We've got our chicken tenders that we seasoned up with Mrs. Dash's table blend, onion powder, garlic salt, black pepper, our shredded chicken taquitos with Monterey Jack cheese in our flour tortillas, our lovely golden brookies made with our doubly chocolatey brownies and our brookie mix, and then our key lime pie, which is a lovely no-bake key lime pie with a just lovely rich base with sweetened condensed milk, fresh lime juice, zest, and a graham cracker crust. Well, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate some of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, our key lime pie, our brookies, our chicken tenders, or our taquitos, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. So I have my knives, my cutting boards, my hex-clad pans, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, guys,